talks in this session. The next talk will be by Ilari Korhonen, University in Finland, development of a native cross-platform iRODS GUI client.
Thank you. So, can you hear me? Is this correct? Okay, great. So, thanks. Great to be here. And my presentation is about my development of a iRODS client that is native and cross-platform at the same time. So, let's get started. So, some background. I work as a systems designer at the University of Jyväskylä in Finland, which is located in central Finland. And we are like a mid-size university, like 15,000 students, 7 different faculties: science, humanities, education, social sciences. And we have a very strong focus in many different research areas: physics, chemistry, biology, nanoscience. And so here's a picture of Jyväskylä. My office is right over there, I think. Usually I just see the big brick of marble, but if I reach real hard, I can see the lake also. But it's a nice place. So, yeah, basically, I have been tasked with developing a campus-wide iRODS infrastructure for research data storage, which should be like applicable to all of our research data, regardless of the field of science. And we have a vast amount of different kinds of requirements because the vast variety of different kinds of fields of science we have, so as well as legislative requirements because of the sensitive nature of some data in social sciences and psychology and biology when human subjects are being used. So we are being subject to heavy legislation. And on the other hand, like physics, chemistry, biology, they produce like vast amounts of data, like huge amounts of data, as you know. And the data formats there are so many of them, proprietary and open, and we should be able to support them with proper metadata extraction and management. And metadata management is the key, I think. That's what is a major focus on our development project. So I can show you some pictures. Here's our Accelerator Lab at the physics department. We have one of the largest particle accelerators in Europe. Not LHC, of course, but it fits in a single building at least. But it's quite large a facility. They do cooperation with ESA and many other major players. And they do research for materials science also, and nanoscience like lithography, and we do neural sciences with connections to like education and development studies and social sciences. And the latest acquisition is this electroneuromag MEG device. And there is this new brain research lab which is starting this autumn. And so we have these basic requirements that all data transfers as well as metadata transfers should be entirely secure. SSL should be used like always. And we need to integrate with the campus authentication infrastructure, which in our case is, of course, Ldap, Kerberos, the usual stuff. And we need to do lots of metadata extraction and management, and with many different kinds of data formats. And we should be able to do audit trails, at least at some point. I have been still working with that. And high availability is also very, very crucial, and scalability, because, well, basically the alternative to using iRODS for like file storage is our EMC NAS. So I should be able to provide an equal quality of service on top of iRODS as just EMC NAS. And additionally, the service should be very easily used, because not all the scientists are computer experts. There are social scientists and lots of people who don't have vast technical knowledge. So I can't really teach I commands to everybody. So at the moment, or let's say before this users group event, iRODS had these user interfaces like iDrop and some web interfaces and basically the iCommands interface, which was the like official referenced implementation. But now we are seeing like this might be the 5th or 6th of these interfaces at this meeting, so maybe there will be more. And so I started this project that I would build this client of our own. And I'm calling it Kanki. And actually it's both Finnish and Japanese. You have this restaurant here called Kanki. And in Finland it means rod, a rod. And in Japanese it's cold and frost, which is also very Finnish. So I think it's funny. And so it's not going to be the name of the product just in the code namespace. I use Kanki in the object names, C++ namespace. So basically what I wanted was to seamlessly integrate with iRODS 4 architecture, use all the plugins out of the box, and didn't want to do any SSL stuff myself. And I did want to start building some metadata editors and some more easy-to-use features for less advanced users. And well, why not build a web application? Well, web apps can be great, but there are still some limitations. It's not a substitute entirely for a desktop application, in my opinion. Desktop applications still today have their place. And browsers have issues, incompatibility issues, JavaScript changes all the time, and there's this one certain browser, which I'm not going to mention, which always produces issues. And as Steven at EMC noted yesterday, that large data transfers can be problematic with browsers. So when you have a direct interface to iRODS code, you don't have to worry about that because iRODS does the transfer for you. You just integrate with the API library and let it do the rest, like parallel transfers and stuff like that. So I wanted to do this fully native, and the main reason was performance, I think. Also, to be able to integrate with the new iRODS client library, bundled with iRODS 4. And with this, I can use Kerberos and SSL like really great. It's really straightforward and works great. And of course, portability can be an issue. If you do native code, it can be portable or it can't be portable. But you can do portable code by using standard libraries. STD C++, of course, is standardized ISO standards. Every platform, every implementation of C++ is bound to ISO specifications. And you can use portable frameworks instead of like operating system interfaces. And if you do the GUI development on top of this portable framework, you can build the same code in almost any platform. And there is this framework called Qt. Anybody heard? Great. And it's great, I think. It's very easy. And something about Qt. It's originally from Norway, and it stands for Q Toolkit. I think I read it because Q was a pretty letter, and the guy had an Emacs font that Q looked nice. And it's Q Toolkit like XT, X Toolkit, the canonical X Toolkit. And funny fact, the first release of Qt 0.9 was uploaded to sunsite.unc.edu at May 20, 1995. That was the first release of Qt. And today it's Finnish owned. Trolltech no more owns Qt. And this is because Nokia in Finland a few years ago started their new mobile platform called MeGo to be built on top of Qt. So Nokia bought Qt. But then Nokia went down, and and then the ownership transferred to Digia in Finland, I think. And now they are running it as a subsidiary of Digia, I think. And Qt can be used on embedded platforms as well. Well, yesterday we saw this Raspberry Pi with iRODS, so maybe we can start building iRODS clients for some embedded platforms as well. And Qt is quite widely deployed. You might say it's the leading platform for cross-platform GUI development. Many projects, many commercial software is built on top of Qt, as well as open source. So some points about the development. Qt is highly modern. It's fully threaded. It uses threaded event dispatchers. And if you build on top of Qt, you should be thread safe so that you don't run into trouble. But Qt makes this very easy. It has this thread safe calling convention called signal slot interface. You build these Qt objects, so they call them, which can be made with signals and slots. The objects can call each other with these defined signals and slots, basically function pointers. And to make this easier, you don't have to write a lot of code. They have lots of precompiler macros to do the heavy lifting. Just say connect this to there. So it's very nice. And since Qt4, they introduced this model view controller architecture that you can build these models for data models like RODS object model, RODS metadata model, stuff like that. And then you can interface this model object to a view object. And you can develop new views if you want, but Qt has many of them. And one thing I like really much is Qt has a UI compiler. You can build UIs in the Qt designer, and then you just compile it, and you get the classes straight out. You don't have to type new this, new that, set this, set that, like a few hundred lines of like silly code you don't want to write. All the trivial stuff is generated from the XML. It's like resources in like at least sometimes Windows and old Mac OS had this like resources for dialogues, windows, stuff like that. So you don't have to like manually write the GUI instantiation code. Qt does the same, and it's instantiated from XML at compile stage, and then it compiles the XML into C++, so it's fully native and fast. And at this stage, I have a partial object-oriented interface for iRODS built on top of the native library. Not every function of iRODS is currently implemented, but going to be almost. And the GUI has already basic features functional. It's usable, and I have this metadata editor with schema management, and it separates namespaces. You can define schemas with namespaces, attributes with labels, and regexp rules, and stuff like that. I'll show you. And currently it compiles on Linux and Mac OS X. Next week I'll compile it against 4.1. I haven't had the guts yet to do it. But yeah, and Windows support I will add when iRODS 4 adds Windows support. Then it will be straightforward, I think. And I have still lots of work to do, but I am going to release this as beta very soon. And I hope that in the end of the summer we could do a source code release when the university can agree on a license. We have to still discuss what's going to be, and they have to sign off on it, and maybe some really important guy has to put a signature in some paper and stuff like that. But I hope it will be reality by the end of summer. And some code examples. This is, can you see this at the end? Great. So this is an example of the interface I use. You can see the namespace, and I have this generic query class that you use to build gen queries. And you just simply create a new object, associate the connection object, and then see that if it's a data object, add query attribute, data, because iRODS have these different attribute types for data objects, collection objects, so you have to decide which kind of object you want to query. And you just add the query columns, or attributes as I call them, and then add query conditions, and like in this case, object type, data object or collection object is equal to this object's name. So basically I'm querying metadata AVUs for an object. And in case it's a data object, you also need to add the condition for the collection path is equal to this object collection path. And then you say execute. Now this builds the iRODS API memory structures, the pointer tables and stuff like that, and then executes the API and fetches the results and parses it into an std C++ containers inside the object. Now, and here if it fails, you do some error reporting, whether using Qt or command line std out. This interface, these classes which belong to this Kanki namespace, these are not bound to Qt. These are only bound to std C++ and iRODS. So I'm going to separate this from the UI when I get the chance. And then when the execute returns the results, you just get the std vectors from the object, and then you can do whatever you want with them. So this is an example. And my to-do list is very long, and it's going to get more longer, I think. I'm going to do drag and drop from desktop and to desktop, and within the iRODS browser window. And of course, a search window with arbitrary criteria, and metadata validation, which is important according to my bosses, and custom editors for metadata attributes. So I can do this interface in the GUI, instantiate this kind of editor for this kind of object. And a rule exec interface, you can send a rule to iRODS to execute. And of course, an access control list editor. And like iDrop has also the synchronization, this should also have. And I think at the first stage, I'm just going to be lazy and do a GUI for iRSync. And basically, in the beginning, it will assume that you have iCommands installed, and it executes iRSync and gives you the results. But later on, I will write my own code for the synchronization. And, well, whatever suggestions you have, of course, I want to know and start doing them later on. And now I'm going to start sweating, and let's do a demo. And so basically, this is my Mac. I'm connected. I have a VPN, sysadmin VPN to Jyväskylä. Let's see if I have Kerberos. I should. Yes, I have Kerberos. So here in my applications folder, I have this thing called iRODS app, right next to iPhoto, of course. And I made this icon for it. This is the official iRODS logo on top of a freely available icon from the Tango icon theme. And so let's try it. Yeah. Now we are connected to Finland. This is connected to a server called rodsdev ccjui.fi with SSL, with proper encryption, and through Kerberos. And let's try to do something. Well, of course, you can navigate through the folders like this, or using the keyboard. And this is a bit slow now because of the latency. But when it has fetched the attributes, it's much more fast then. But right now it's like a bit slow because there's lots of latency through the Atlantic. And yeah, let's do a metadata example. Let's see. Yeah, here's a DICOM file. This is an MRI slice. So basically what I have a microservice module running on the server, which processes through DICOM files and extracts metadata to Ikat. And then I have this schema specified for this editor, which recognizes the attributes. This inspector shows you that it's called DICOM acquisition number, like stuff like this. but I have assigned like human-friendly labels to the attributes. So the editor, the viewer doesn't show dicom.imaging frequency, it shows imaging frequency. And it knows that all these belong to this namespace called dicom. And we have this own namespace with our own schema attributes like metadata identifiers and data version. Well, this isn't then exactly a versioning file system. Just I wanted to keep track when you update a data object. When you like refresh it, you put -f, or you overwrite it. So this generates a new version info. And it assigns a new UUID to the new data. So you can know that the data has been updated and when, by who. So some auditing is already there. So let's try to add something. So you can type an attribute. Let's say UGM like this. It doesn't belong to any namespace, so it goes to global namespace. And by default, it just assigns some kind of value. You just then update it. And the refresh is, well, in this case, a bit slow because of the latency and number of attributes, but it's not terribly slow, I think. And then if you remove it, the namespace goes away. And if you want to like this is the schema currently loaded to the editor. It's like with dicom and exif and FIFF, which is the neural imaging, functional imaging file format, and ITPC press information and our iRODS attributes. And so if we want to add like a subject attribute or owner. So it should go here, and it could say me. So this is the metadata editor, and some small things like a QStat window, because I run delayed rules. I don't want the metadata extraction to interfere with the transfer, so I set the extraction to be delayed, like started from the queue right away. So it does the transfer parallel with the extraction, and you can see from the window that the queue gets smaller and smaller, and then you know that the metadata has been loaded. And of course, you can like create collections like this. And then you can upload stuff like this. Yeah, it seems to be working. Slow connection. Let's see the QStat. Yeah, we have extract metadata running. Soon it should be gone. Let's hope. Yeah, it seems to be going away, luckily. It's refreshing itself. It's on a timer. It refreshes itself like for, I don't remember, once a second maybe or something. So yeah, now we should have metadata for the JPEGs. It shows you like artist and EXIF tags and camera models and these things, press information and stuff like that. And of course you can delete. I still don't have the "Are you sure" dialogue, but that's easy to implement. Oh! And it crashed! Yeah! Thanks. My pleasure. I think some threads collided or something, but it usually doesn't do that. It's like, I could say like Bill Gates in the year 98 that it's glad that I'm not shipping this yet. But as you can see, usually it works. But it will work. So this was Mac OS. So of course, cross-platform. So let's try. I have this Linux VM here. This is CentOS 6 because it's the best, I think the support for CentOS is best at the moment. And we use Red Hat Enterprise Linux at Jyväskylä. So I have the Git repo cloned here. And let's see, now this is connected to this virtual machine on my laptop. I have this HA cluster running on this laptop. And I tried also that these Finnish characters, you know, ä and ö, are working. And they're actually called that, yeah. And new collection, well, and let's try to upload something like from the Linux file system. So it's really much faster than the connection through the Atlantic. Oh, we have attributes. Which one? Why is that there? Interesting. Well, yeah, this bound to the collection, but yeah, that must be why. Interesting. And I think we have some time for questions. So I think this should conclude my demonstration. It almost worked. So please. If iRODS is ported to Raspberry Pi, sure. And it is. So yes, I can. Maybe.
We have time for questions.
We have 2 minutes. Please.
Hi. Hello. So my question is, I saw that you're actually handling Kerberos and Ldap authentication.
Yep.
But for users to authenticate against iRODS, the users must exist on the Ikat database. How do you handle the differences between the Ldap directory and your Ikat databases?
Actually not yet. I have to manually sync the accounts from Ldap to iRODS.
Okay.
But with Kerberos, it's easy because you just tell iRODS that this iRODS user is a Kerberos principal something at something. Yeah. So that works great.
Okay.
But the Ldap sync should be like manual or scripted or something.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah.
Over here. Have you ever thought about maybe having a proxy? I mean, sometimes people deal with very large files, and they want to have the GUI on their local box.
Yeah.
But maybe they're moving terabytes of files.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to have a proxy which runs on, say, a cluster head node or something like that, which actually does the heavy lifting of moving files around from remote file system to remote iRODS resource server?
And the GUI would be just executing commands for that.
Exactly, yes.
Interesting. Really interesting. Why not? But you could also use the iRODS rule engine. Maybe install an iRODS resource server on the cluster head node and just execute rules.
Yeah, but have the GUI.
Oh yeah, maybe. Just like write a GUI front end for the operation which sends a rule exec. Yeah. I have been actually thinking about writing like special cases of some rules which have like GUI implementations which go to the server and do a rule exec. Yeah. Yeah, I have thought about it, but great idea, thanks.